not just for one day or 1 week or 1 month, but for decades. And we need to be honest about that. It is most distressing when members of parliament ignore facts. This cannot be something that we tolerate. It is also untrue that South Africa has not criticized Hamas for its breach of international human rights law. It has. The President stated very clearly, in concert with the Secretary General of the United Nations, that the killing of civilians and taking of hostages is a violation of international human rights law. So we must be accurate in all our contributions, and I shall say more later. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister Kubai. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, House Chair. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, honorable members. Let me appreciate the input by honorable member that spoke about the infrastructure development in our country, which is supported as Minister Zikalala has been rolling out part of the work that is in support of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. That is work that will continue to support communities where we ensure that urban and rural communities are aligned and therefore are able to assist and support for the economic development in our areas. So we appreciate this by member of ANC who has raised it and comment that and assuring our communities that as we continue with the implementation of the ERR and the infrastructure development, more communities will be supported and we'll see this program arriving to them. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The last one, the Honorable Deputy Minister Moloi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The point raised by Honorable Kosti of the EFF earlier on, Honorable Chair, I must say that it is very sad, and I don't think also it does. I don't think it warrants any response from the ministry, because the honourable member does participate in the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labour, and her concerns, all her concerns and fears are always addressed there, and there's never been any given moment where we, as the department, refuses to give information to the Portfolio Committee or any member for that matter. I don't think it does warrant any response of an Honourable House Chairperson, and I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes ministerial responses. Honourable members, the fourth item on the order paper is the statement by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation on the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. I will now recognize the Honorable the Minister.
Oh, ibingacofa kuqala kutheni ngoku sifuna ukucofa. Besifika iqomvu. Namhlanje andazi bayitheni. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, once more. I should have agreed with the Honorable Pumza that the African National Congress is not deterred by these polls that are always meant to frighten the African National Congress. We will campaign hard and we will do well. Honorable members and Honorable Chairperson, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present this statement. Today, I believe all of us join the world in expressing horror at the war crimes being committed in Palestine through the targeting of civilians, civilian infrastructure, UN premises, and other vulnerable targets. These actions remind us of our experiences as Black South Africans living under apartheid. This is one of the key reasons South Africans, like people in cities all over the world, have taken to the streets to express their anger and concern at what is taking place in Gaza and the West Bank. These demonstrations illustrate the frustration felt the world over that people are being attacked and are losing their lives with little or no action to stop these atrocities. The facts that have been released detailing the devastation of the current conflict are horrendous. Over 1,000 Palestinians are dead, thousands injured, public facilities destroyed, and cruel and wanton bombardment is ongoing. Therefore, as South Africa, we remain steadfast in calling for an immediate comprehensive ceasefire, the full as well as complete opening of all humanitarian corridors to ensure much needed aid and basic services reach those in need. Madam Chairperson, the actions that we are witnessing daily by Israel are a violation of international law, including the United Nations Charter, the Geneva Convention, and all its protocols. In its attacks on and kidnapping of innocent civilians, Hamas has also violated international law. While we express horror at the violence, it is critical that we acknowledge that the illegal occupation of Palestine by Israel for several decades has led to bitter hatred and increased violence, and that this violence is not the first violence the people of Palestine have experienced. It has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and nothing we can say will obliterate that fact. However, Chairperson, the murder of children, of women, and the aged by Israel is an act that should have resulted in the International Criminal Court issuing an immediate arrest warrant for key decision makers, including Mr. Netanyahu, who is responsible for violations of international criminal law. Madam Chairperson and honorable members, it's important to stress that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can only be solved through the establishment of two states, Palestine and Israel, living side by side in peace. The Palestinian state should be created along the lines of the 1967 border with East Jerusalem as its capital and in line with standing multiple UN resolutions. For this two-state solution to materialize, a peace process initiated by the United Nations needs to commence urgently. We are aware that increasing settlements and illegal occupation have been used to make the creation of a Palestinian state almost impossible. The world must reject the Bantustan-type balkanization that has increased bitterness and hatred. We must reinforce all efforts aimed at creating two states. Madam Chair and honorable members, the collective punishment that Israel is exacting on all Palestinian people is an affront that has gone on for too long. The world has expressed horror at these affronts, but has not acted effectively to save Palestinian lives. Sadly, even here in our own country, there are many who choose to turn a blind eye to these atrocities. On 27 October this year, our country was among more than 2/3 of the member states of the United Nations that called for an immediate ceasefire in the General Assembly. This decision of the General Assembly has been ignored. It is impossible for us to continue to proclaim the importance of international law and the importance of the UN Charter for some situations and not for others, as if the rule of law only applies to a select few. For international law to be credible, it should be uniformly applied and not be selective. Let us be clear.
Minister, talk a little bit about logistical issues.
Let us be clear,
Excuse me,
honorable members. Israel is an occupying power, confirmed
Honorable
by the
Minister.
International Court of
Honorable Minister.
Website, everybody needs a visa. There are no
Honorable Minister, sorry about that. IT, could you please remove
long.
This is the third time
sorry.
this honorable member has done this.
Honorable Papa.
Just wanted to raise an issue which the previous presiding officer raised of members who, when we are in the sitting, they are busy with other things. I think that issue is very serious, and it's not a matter which you can laugh about, as Dr. Ndlozi is trying to do. It's a serious matter. And
Thank
it
you very
affects
much.
all the
Noted.
political
Thank you.
parties, by the way.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It's noted. You may proceed, Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, it's important that we should be clear on facts. Israel is an occupying power. This was confirmed by the International Court of Justice as well as the United Nations. As an occupying power, Israel can use tools applicable to the rule of law, including policing powers, to deal with criminal actions in the area it occupies. An occupying state cannot exercise control over territory it occupies and simultaneously attack that territory on the claim that it is foreign and poses an exogenous national security threat. The notion of Israel's right to defend itself through military means has been used erroneously in international law by many and deliberately by others to justify the unlawful use of force by Israel on the people of Palestine in Gaza and the West Bank. The crime of genocide sadly looms large in the current situation in Gaza. We recall that in 1994, a genocide occurred on the African continent, with much of the whole world watching as innocent people were massacred. During the Second World War, innocent people were massacred and placed under siege. In response, at the end of the war, an international system was created, including the establishment of the United Nations. Human rights instruments and judicial mechanisms were also established so that history would not repeat such cruelty. However, the selective application of these international instruments and the utilization of some of the mechanisms for attaining narrow interests has resulted in calling to question the effectiveness of the system. It is a system that has failed the people of Gaza as it did in 1994 for the people of Rwanda and later of Bosnia. What is needed now, more than ever before, is reform of the system of global governance so that it is fair, equitable, and has the capacity to respond to the needs of all persons in situations of threat and harm. The system that is needed should not just be a tool for the most powerful countries of the world, but one that provides protection for the most vulnerable. The inadequacy of the UN Security Council, which we've pointed to many times, a council that has a mandate derived from the UN Charter for the maintenance of international peace and security, has become a glaring fault in the international system. The Security Council, due to aggravated politicization, has not at the very least been able to call for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow for much needed humanitarian supplies to go to those that need it most. This once again illustrates the urgent need for the reform of this body. Chairperson, many of us feel helpless looking at the images of the suffering children and other innocent civilians as they are battered. As South Africans, we need to raise our voices and call for the following concrete actions to end the suffering. 1, an immediate comprehensive ceasefire. 2, the opening of humanitarian corridors so that aid and other basic services reach all in need. 3, all parties to exercise restraint and to desist from fueling this patently unjust war and human suffering, including by seizing the supplying of weapons to the various parties. 4, the release of all civilian hostages. 5, in light of statements on the use of nuclear power, the establishment of a Middle East nuclear weapons-free zone, just as we have created on our continent, Africa. 6, the resumption of a comprehensive dialogue led and owned by Palestinians and Israelis themselves and facilitated by the United Nations. And 7th, the deployment of a UN rapid deployment force in Palestine mandated to monitor the implementation of a ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, and most importantly, to protect civilians. Chairperson, honorable members, our common humanity dictates that all human lives matter, and the time for the international community to stand together and act is now. We who enjoy the freedom from apartheid can never, ever be the ones who agree to an apartheid form of oppression. And it is not merely ourselves who are saying this, it is international organizations that have done research on torture, imprisonment, killing, and who previously, when reporting on other matters, are regarded as credible, but when it comes to Israel, their reports are not accepted. This cannot be tolerated. This brutality should not be accepted. We must call for a ceasefire now as honorable members of the House of South Africa. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Powell.
Thank you. Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance stands in solidarity with both Palestinians and Israelis who seek a two-state solution. We embrace rationality based on peaceful coexistence for a secure Israel and a free Palestine. We seek the triumph of rational forces committed to peaceful coexistence on both sides of this terrible conflict. That is why we stand united in our condemnation of the brutality unleashed on the Israeli people by Hamas on the 7th of October. This massacre conjured some of the darkest memories of centuries of persecution against the Jewish people. We condemn in the strongest terms the dehumanization of any person on the basis of their faith, their race, their lineage, or their place of birth. But Hamas's actions on the 7th of October also betrayed the people of Gaza, unleashing a calamity that is unprecedented in living memory upon more than 2 million Palestinians. What is equally true is that the people of Palestine are not defined by Hamas, and the people of Palestine cannot and must not be subjected to collective punishment. That is why the DA condemns, in the strongest terms, Israeli radicals like Minister Eliav, who over the weekend threatened the use of nuclear weapons against the people of Palestine. Dangerous statements such as these are transparent dog whistles to escalation, designed to perpetuate an already fractious climate of fear and terror, the disproportionate burden of which is borne by innocent civilians. The DA remains concerned by the escalation of violence and the rising death toll in both Gaza and on the West Bank. The intense human suffering and the scale of civilian casualties must be brought to urgent conclusion. We again call on Israel to ensure that defensive action is indeed carried out within the confines of international law. Both the indiscriminate killing of civilians through the use of carpet bombing and the vile use of civilians as human shields by terrorists must be condemned as acts of immorality committed by men who betray the foundational principles of the very faiths they claim to represent. The DA further calls for the creation of safe zones and for a humanitarian pause in the fighting to ensure the flow of increased aid into Gaza and to allow more civilians to access guaranteed safety. Importantly, as the fighting rages, we call on all peace-loving South Africans to recognize the deeper conflict playing out on both sides of this terrible war. This is not a war between the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac, but rather a war between radicalism, which seeks the annihilation of the other side, and rationality, which recognizes the inherent rights of both the Israelis and the Palestinians to statehood, sovereignty, and security. Fundamentalists on both sides of this conflict, who have been stewing in a combustible combination of grievances for generations and who feed off of one another in order to ramp up and rationalize their own extremism, must be rebuked by all of us. For peace to be possible, rationality rather than radicalism must win the day. Honourable members, history will remember the significance of this moment and how we either used our voices to fuel hatred and division or advocate for lasting peace. This crisis can only be brought to an end by those driven by peace building, reconciliation, and possibility. The question that all of us in this House must today ask ourselves is how we can each be honest brokers of peace. Because despite the lessons imparted by the giants of our democracy, some amongst us today have already descended into the fog of war and are now entirely blinded by it. South Africa's history should serve as a beacon of hope, reminding the world that peace and reconciliation are possible even in the darkest of times. Instead, the governing ANC has altogether dismantled our nation's once respected international standing and exposed their inherent moral bankruptcy. The Honourable Minister Pandor cannot stand at this podium and position the ANC government as an honest advocate for peace. The truth is that the ANC seems to have no genuine interest in building peace in the Middle East. They are only interested in using this tragedy for their own political gain, hoping that they can sow division and distract the South African people from their dismal failure as our government. The minister's recent telephone call to the leader of Hamas squandered any last remaining vestige of credibility her department had left. The Honourable Minister's recent visit to Iran to meet President Raisi, who is actively funding Hamas and whose government has ordered the execution of more than 1,275 of their own citizens since August 2021, has exposed the ANC for the hypocrites that they are. As the prospect of electoral defeat looms ever closer, the ANC stands exposed before the world as the desperate political opportunists that they have now become. But South Africa is more than her government, and we, her people, can still raise our voices in support of fundamental moral propositions, that Israel has a right to exist and to protect her people, that the Palestinian people have a right to live in peace, free from occupation and the threat of unyielding retaliation for crimes perpetrated by terrorists, and that through a two-state solution, both Israel and Palestine can enjoy freedom and prosperity. With these aspirations as our guiding light, the international community must stand together to support restoring the security of Israel and ensuring the return of hostages, the urgent provision of adequate humanitarian aid to Gaza, the establishment of safe zones for displaced civilians, and an urgent humanitarian pause in the fighting to ensure the free flow of aid and to allow more civilians to reach these safe zones. World leaders need to urgently come together and start building the conditions for peace. Now is the time for leaders from across South Africa to unite on the basis of our shared constitutional values and call for peace. Drawing on the lessons of our nation's negotiated settlement in 1994 that averted war and built peace, we encourage all South African civil, religious, and political leaders to come together and to offer our mutual assistance in finding resolution to this abhorrent crisis and mapping a pathway to lasting peace in the region. Peace is possible, but we must have the moral fortitude to stand with those who pursue it and to condemn all of those who seek to destroy it. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member.
A complete distortion of what is happening in Gaza.
The Honourable Dr. Ndlozi.
Thank you, House Chairperson. We're here to stand with Palestine. We're here to take sides in favor of the oppressed. condemn Israel and declare that it is a murderous apartheid regime engaged in systematic extermination of Palestinians. It is not a single event. They are engaged in a system permanently subjecting Palestinians to racial humiliation. We do this because we understand that our freedom here was attained through massive international solidarity by peoples of the world, 90% of which had never set foot here. It is in this context that we are responding to the suffering of a people who live thousands of kilometers from South Africa. We know that we're international citizens. As we stand here, Israel has massacred over 10,000 Palestinians in Gaza under their military assault, killing children, bombing churches, hospitals, schools. Many have been painting Palestinians who are responding over half a century to Israeli systematic oppression as terrorists. Now, the label of terrorists, we know it very well, because it is a label that was put to Mandela. It is a label that was given to Sobukwe. It is a label that was given to the liberation movement. The Israeli state was formed in 1948 with the full support of Western powers through forced removals and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Fact. It was inaugurated as a Jewish-only state, where Palestinians who have the right to the land are not returned or are not allowed to return. Yet any Jewish person who was not born there, who has never been there, can go and attain citizenship with immediate effect. They control movements of people through thousands of military checkpoints. In fact, they have built a wall and a fence around Gaza controlling entry and exit of people and goods. There are separate roads for Palestinians and Jewish people around many Jewish settlements in Palestine. Palestinians do not enjoy freedom to demonstrate against their oppressor. They are told demonstrations, they get arrested, they even get killed. Thousands of Palestinians are arrested without trial, even charged in Israeli military courts. The world knows this. And when Palestinians respond, they are called terrorists. The Israeli state is fundamentally a racist state. Nobody must be allowed to coexist with a fundamentally racist state. You can't be asked in the interest of the values of our constitution to recognize a racist state whose establishment is for a Jewish-only people at the expense of Palestinians. Why would you do that? Those are the facts. This is not a religious war, Mrudi. It's an evil war. It's not a holy war. There is no people who have a God's right to be superior to anyone. The Israelis don't represent the Jewish communities of the world. They represent Zionism and racism. It must be said here. Whoever supports them supports racism. So, what is South Africa doing in a relationship with a racist regime? If they are engaged in a genocidal exercise, Minister Naledi Pandor, why are you recalling people for consultation? Because you've already declared that there is a genocide. Why are we friends with people who are violating the values of our constitution? Why are we friends with people who are massacring children in hospitals, in schools? What must happen? What must be said before the whole world isolates Israel? Israelis, Palestinians for the longest time never asked you for a single bullet, which they should, because they've got the right to fight even with military arms against a racist regime. They've asked you for a simple thing: isolate Israel the way the world isolated apartheid. When are you doing that? Let's sever ties, because a relationship with Israel as South African offends our constitutional values. It offends any rational thinking about coexistence. It offends peace. We should recall the ambassadors. Everybody, we should fire the ambassador of Israel. We can't be friends with Israel until they establish a society in compliance with international law on one hand, and they recognize the right of Palestinians to coexist. I wish I wish for once in our lives, we can be on the right side of history. Let's
Honorable
sever
Ndlozi.
all ties with the racists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The good doctor.
The Honorable Frangwa.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, I think of the 7 action steps that you have enumerated in your statement, none of them can be faulted. The Inkatha Freedom Party has always advocated for the path of non-violence and negotiation and remains steadfast in our belief that a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine could provide the peace, justice, and stability that the Middle East so desperately needs. Exactly a month ago, on October 7, the fragile peace in the Middle East was tested and shattered when a series of Hamas attacks were carried out against Israel, with civilians bearing the brutal brunt of this violence. As the Israel and Palestine conflict continues to inflict suffering on innocent civilians and disrupt regional harmony, the IFP strongly urges all parties involved to lay down their arms and engage in meaningful dialogue to find a lasting solution to this protracted crisis. We call on Israel to exercise restraint and commit to a ceasefire and a peace process. We call on Hamas to join the peace process and come to the negotiation table in finding an amicable solution to this conflict. Now, after weeks of violence, many more innocent lives have been lost. These are not faceless statistics, but real people with hopes and aspirations, families and communities. It is our moral duty, not only as South Africans, but as a global community, to hear their cries and respond to their plight. Further, as the IFP, we want to caution the South African government that isolationism in a time of war is not a solution. Recalling or dismissing ambassadors merely amounts to regressive diplomacy, which in turn complicates the negotiations. If South Africa is truly to be a trusted mediator, committed to reaching a negotiated peace, all parties to the conflict must be treated in the same way. As the IFP, we echo the call of the United Nations for both sides to declare an immediate ceasefire and to return to the negotiating table. The nations of the world must stand together to condemn all violence against civilians, regardless of their circumstances. The international community, including the United Nations, must facilitate and support these negotiations, ensuring that they are fair, inclusive, and conducted in good faith. Chairperson, we want to reiterate that we remain committed to a two-state solution whereby both nations can peacefully coexist. Achieving this solution will require both sides to make concessions for the greater good. It is therefore incumbent on all of us to be part of the solution and not to contribute to the problem. Honorable Chairperson, security is a fundamental concern, quite clearly, for both Israelis and Palestinians. Therefore, by advocating for an immediate cessation of hostilities, condemning the violence, and pushing strongly for a two-state solution, we are also advocating for the safety and security of those living in the region. Further, we want to reiterate the call and need to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches the people who so direly need them during this difficult time. But at the forefront of our thinking, House Chairperson, is a clarion call for peace and negotiation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Frangwa. The Honorable Dr. Melder.
Thank you, Honorable. Can we just get? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Today is the 7th of November. It was exactly a month ago, on the 7th of October, when a group of Hamas fighters, some call them terrorists, some will call them freedom fighters, attacked civilians in the southern part of Israel. And the worst atrocities thinkable were perpetrated by this group of people. 1,400 Israeli citizens, civilians murdered, maimed, raped, children beheaded, put in ovens and set alight. That happened. The ANC, how did the ANC respond? The ANC, the whole cabinet, came out with their scarves and they said, we support and we stand with Palestine. They said they support and stand with Palestine with the flags and everything in your hands. Not one word of condemnation of Hamas and these atrocities. Not one word. Only after Ahmed Abbas denounced Hamas, after that, a weak sentence came. Oh, the record is there and the minister knows that. A weak record came from the ANC. The minister today was more than normally a responsible minister with good proposals, creating an impression that the ANC is sincere in this whole process. No, you're not. While the Honorable Dr. Mzwakhe was speaking and making an attack on Israel with all those statements, this side of the House, the ANC, were all nodding in support. All of you, look at that. Yes, 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 yes. There you go. There you go. That is the real ANC. That is the real ANC, not the position taken by the minister today. What was the relationship in Gaza? What was the relationship between Gaza and Israel before the 7th of October? What was the relationship? Every day, 20,000 people from Gaza went into Israel to voluntary work. There was a good relationship. Every day, hundreds of trucks went into Gaza to take goods and to bring exports from Gaza back. That was the relationship. But then Hamas decided to destroy all of that. Now, the minister, you have now recalled our ambassadorial staff in Israel. And you've said it's for consultation purposes. It's not for consultation. No, you can take the telephone and consult. You can take a Zoom call and consult. You've drew those people. Why? To send a message to Israel and to send a message to your supporters as well. But you know what? Your message reached further. Today, 2 senators in the US, Senator Chris Coons and Senator Jim Risch, reacted to that statement of yours. The fact that you are with Russia, the fact that you are with Hamas, the fact that you are with Iran, you went there. Today they've reacted by saying the AGOA process, they will have to take a course of corrective action in Congress. That's the reality. You say it's okay. You say it's okay. Now, Honourable Minister, unfortunately, I don't have the time to discuss all these things with you. I've got 4 minutes. But let me conclude. I have reason to believe that you've got good contacts with Hamas and you've got good contacts with Iran. Oh, yes, you do. Now, let me tell you,
members,
the conflict can
allow
stop.
the speaker to conclude.
The conflict can stop today. Today. 3 conditions, 3 of them. The missiles fired from Gaza must stop. The missiles must stop. Secondly, all hostages must be released immediately. Thirdly, the perpetrators of these atrocities by Hamas must be punished. I hope the minister listened. I hope you will convey this. I'm telling you, there are 3. You don't listen to me. You don't listen to me. You don't have to listen to me. The ANC is on the wrong side of history, and that's why you will be rejected.
Thank you very much, Honourable Dr. Melda.
Goodbye to the ANC.
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members. The Honourable 3.
Honourable House Chairperson, the ACGP asserts that South Africa has a moral obligation to support a negotiated solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to distance itself from a radicalized position on Israel, a position which undermines any hope of a negotiated process and a peaceful outcome. The ACDP believes that the recalling of South Africa's diplomats in Israel will not serve any benefit to the Palestinian people. It simply removes South Africa's ability and authority to play a mediated role in any future peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. By recalling our diplomats, we have lost that role. This was affirmed by conflict resolution expert Dr. Kingsley Makubela, who said the move was incorrect as the absence of a South African diplomatic mission in Tel Aviv will not change the situation and will not allow South Africa a better understanding of what's happening here. Cabinet's decision to recall our Israeli diplomats is based on the assertion that the Israeli government failed to respect international law. The ACDP notes and appreciates the breaking of the silence in condemning and flouting international law by Hamas when they raped women, murdered and burnt children and whole families, and kidnapped over 200 hostages, including, Minister, 2 South African women, and there was silence from South African government on that. Likewise, we cannot remain silent at the slaughter of thousands of ethnic Africans at the hands of the Arab Janjaweed, calling dark-skinned Africans Anbaye, slaves. We cannot be silent. Israel's history with its land goes back some 4,100 years, and some 3,400 years ago, Israel was established as a nation. Fact. Christianity was established 2,000 years ago, and Islam about 1,400 years ago. It is a fact that Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005 and is not an occupier. Hamas is. The current conflict can be found in the opening paragraph of Hamas's covenant. Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others. Article 7 of Hamas says the day of judgment would not come until Muslims fight and kill Jews. This is not a call for peace, but a call for genocide. More chilling are Hamas's chants. First, the people of the Saturday Jews, and then the people of the Sunday Christians. The ACDP takes no pleasure in the death of the innocents and calls on both sides of this war to come together,
Thank you,
the international
Honourable Member.
community, to bring all to the peace
The time
of
is up.
the table of peace. I thank you.
The Honourable Kwankwa. Order, honourable members.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The United Democratic Movement supports the Minister's call for an immediate cessation of all hostilities between Israel and Palestine in order to create an environment that is conducive for dialogue to occur. The fact is, the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict, which began in the mid-20th century, is one of the world's longest continuing conflict, and the international community must bear part of the blame and responsibility for allowing this conflict to continue for as long as it has, and allowing and accepting the longest occupation in modern history. The conflict is characterized, as we know now and we have seen, by war crimes, from the intentional attacks on innocent women and children, innocent civilians, collective punishment of innocent people for the actions of Hamas. The racist world, unfortunately, which made the loudest noise in the war between Russia and Ukraine, has conveniently and decided to turn a blind eye to the merciless murder of women and children who are innocent simply because they are different color. As democratic countries around the world, we have failed the brutalized civilians in Gaza. People are denied the most basic needs such as food, water, and health services, while you, so-called Democrats and human rights activists, decide to conveniently turn a blind eye to what we consider to be a serious human rights violation of human race. In the face of the murder of Palestinians, in fact, the Palestinians will, in the end, borrowing the words of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, will not remember the words of their enemies, but the silence of their friends. Throughout history, women and children have consistently borne the brunt of the consequences of war, suffering long-term hardships. Israel's war in Gaza exemplifies this tragic reality as it continues to take a heavy toll on the lives of women and children with each passing day. We have said, while this occurs, the UN Security Council continues to deter and to bicker about insignificant issues while people are losing lives. We are calling not only on the South African government, but would like to make a clarion call to continental leaders to do exactly what they did in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Maybe try to initiate its own independent mediation effort, because the United States is discredited as a mediator. They can't be arming Israel and giving aid to Israel and then pretend and parade on TV as if they are trying to actually call for an immediate ceasefire, which is unadulterated claptrap. They think we're stupid. They are saying fight on the one hand, and on the other they are parading in front of cameras, posturing for the public, saying we're negotiating for a ceasefire and whatever they want to call it. In actual fact, they are supporting war because they are benefiting in their industry through war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Zongola. ATM.
Thank you, Chair. This debate is of paramount importance to our nation's values, its commitment to justice, its legacy as a beacon of hope for those oppressed and seeking freedom. First and foremost, the ATM condemns the continuous violation of human rights in the Israeli-Palestine conflict. It is a humanitarian crisis that demands our collective outrage and immediate attention. We cannot remain silent whilst innocent civilians, including the most vulnerable women and children, suffer the devastating consequences of this protracted conflict. We as a nation must uphold the principles of justice, human dignity, self-determination for all peoples, including Palestinian people. We express our full support for the South African government decision to recall all South African diplomats from Israel. This is a crucial step that signifies our nation's commitment to the principles of justice and human rights. We must stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, just as the world once stood with us during our own struggle against apartheid. Our history serves as a stark reminder of the value of the global support in the face of oppression and injustice. Furthermore, we strongly condemn the actions of the Israel's ambassadors to South Africa. Diplomacy should be conducted in a manner that is consistent with international law and principles of mutual respect. When such actions undermine these principles, they demand our swift and resolute response. In our fight against apartheid, we learned the profound significance of international solidarity and support. We cannot remain silent when faced with a gross violation of human rights. The parallels between our own painful history and the Israel-Palestine conflict are undeniable. That is why, as the ATM, in solidarity with the Palestinian people, calls for the Israel embassy in South Africa to be shut down, and the ambassador declared a persona non grata as a powerful symbol of our protest against apartheid and genocide. We must take all necessary precautions to ensure that South Africa is not complicit in these grave human rights violations. Our nation's dedication to human rights should be unwavering, and we must strive to set an example for the world by defending these fundamental principles. In conclusion, we align ourselves with the Minister of International Relations, and we call for unwavering commitment to justice, peace, and the protection of human rights in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Let us be a voice of the voiceless and work diligently towards a future where both Israelis and Palestinians can coexist in peace and security. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Heron.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, in a dynamic and complex world of shifting geopolitical power, South Africa's foreign policy must be guided by the same constitutional values and principles that guide policy at home. On that basis, we cannot look the other way when Russia invades a neighboring sovereign state, nor when Israel perpetrates genocide against the people of Palestine. We can't maintain friendly relations with a state that has publicly committed itself to perpetrating unprecedented violence against innocent people, to buttress unjust policies that trigger memories of our own experiences under apartheid. A state that is holding millions of people collectively responsible for Hamas's 7th of October attack, despite the overwhelming majority of them having nothing to do with Hamas. We can't look the other way when images of dead and wounded Palestinian children dominate our screens and consciousness. As such, we regard the further review of diplomatic relations with Israel as necessary and appropriate and as a matter of principle. We further call on DIRCO to turn up the heat at the United Nations for a resolution calling for ceasefire. It's the right thing to do. This doesn't mean we're anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas, or don't believe that the people of Israel have the same right as the people of any other nation to live in safety. To be clear, for as long as Israel illegally occupies Palestinian land, encourages its farmers to grab more land, and regards Palestinians as untrustworthy and deserving of contempt, it breathes fresh oxygen on a smoldering fire. It provides fresh daily provocation for people who are willing to do what Hamas did 4 Saturdays ago. Palestinians have a generational duty to struggle for their freedom from occupation and contempt. Their actions, however, must comply with acceptable international practices with respect to the protection of civilian lives. Neither the extremist leaders in Palestine and Israel, nor their backers across the region and the Atlantic, own solutions to the crisis. There aren't any military solutions. Real solutions belong to ordinary citizens and civil society. The people of Israel and Palestine must stand up against violence and hate and elect leaders willing to engage in meaningful dialogue to develop an environment in which Jews and Muslims can live in peace, be it in 2 separate states or a single human community. In the meantime, the only short-term solution is an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Let me start off by saying my colleagues here, either they have gone deaf or they have gone blind. I hear some of them saying we must go and negotiate. Isn't that what was happening for all these years and Israel has not complied with one single agreement? So now you still say you must go negotiate. And what you're asking them to go and negotiate, or you want to negotiate with the Palestinians on something that rightfully belongs to the Palestinians. And why are you forgetting that Israel never existed? The Palestinian Jews, Christians, and Muslims have lived there peacefully side by side for thousands of years. It's Zionism that's only 100 some odd years old. That is what the problem is. And I'm not surprised by you, Freedom Front. I cannot be surprised because you and the Zionist state of Israel are no different. That is exactly what you did to ordinary South Africans during the days of apartheid. So when you talk about wanting to have a settlement and agreement, now I see you raising a question about there was peace in the middle, particularly in Gaza. Where do you get your facts from? Every other day, Palestinians have been massacred in Palestine. And you don't see that. Suddenly you see 200 hostages and suddenly you are rising. Your temperatures have gone very high. To the DA, let me turn on and say to you, stop living a lie. You go back and search your conscience. What is the truth about Palestine? Go and do that. You get funding from the Zionist state. That's why you have to come here and sing their praises. That is exactly what you are doing. Your survival depends on that. That is the problem to you. To the IFP, I want to say, what dialogue can you talk about? What about the agreements that were entered into? Tell me, so many. They have not complied. Israel has not complied with one single agreement. You heard the statement by the minister in Israel. What did he say? Go and throw an atomic bomb there, a nuclear bomb. That is what he says. Now, are you telling me, is that conducive environment for negotiation? No. We are saying there's only one way. Expel the Israeli ambassador once and for all and shut the embassy in South Africa. Shut the embassy, the liaison office in Israel. Shut it down. It's the only way they're going to learn. You said that during apartheid, but we got it. Chairperson, Minister, visa conditions must be stringent for Israelis wanting to visit South Africa. On the issue of dual citizenship, we need to have a relook at it because you cannot be using dual citizenship to go and participate in that military and commit atrocities. And remember, it's a serious threat to South Africa as well. The monies that are coming into this country to fund these Zionist political parties here, we need to deal with that as well. And until you stop the funding that's coming, these people, remember, they are led by the United States, their big boss. This is what it is all about.
Thank you very much. Your time is up.
So we need to take the stringent action, and we need to take it now. But lastly, I want to say, if you are silent, you are supporting genocide.
The time is
Silence
up.
means supporting genocide. And to the
Honorable Sheikh,
ACDP,
the time
stop using
is up.
religion. Religion won't work anymore.
Honorable Sheikh, the time is up. Order, honorable members. As the tempers are flying, please let's consider time. The Honorable Chafta.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. When the South African government created its Israel embassy, we were hopeful that the Israel embassy in South Africa will be permanently closed. We note that the onslaught against the innocent civilians of Palestine has been justified by the South African Jewish deputies. We condemn this justification with the contempt it deserves. We also have not healed from the utterances sponsored by the then CRL Commissioner, Mr. Mkwanas Kaluva, who had argued that the downgrading of the Israel embassy was set to unfairly impact on the ability of South African Jews to practice and identify with their religion and cultural heritage. This line of reasoning was short-sighted, as one could not elevate some fusy cultural rights over human rights. Honorable Chair, we believe that there is a greater discourse to be had with the South African Zionist Federation, particularly to condemn Israel's crude destruction of human life. We also believe that a dialogue must be had with South African Union of Jewish Students and Benin Akiva, South Africa. We must foster a common understanding of human rights. Moreover, and most importantly, we call on a national boycott of the following brands: the Volvo Group, which allegedly supplies equipment used to bulldoze Palestinian homes; Protector and Gamble, which produces Pampers; Motorola, which is allegedly provides surveillance equipment suited to round Palestinian settlement; and McDonald's, accused of unfairly discriminating against Arabic workers at their restaurants. Honorable Chair, we cannot allow apartheid Israel to hound the innocent people of Palestine. We therefore demand that the Israel embassy here in South Africa be downgraded with immediate effect. Our freedom is not complete without the freedom of the people of Palestine. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chafta. The Honorable Loate.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. The horrible war between Hamas and Israel is full of such intense hatred between them that neither an end game nor any path to a lasting solution is in sight. I hate to say the word at least, although we know that 1,400 Israelis and more than 10,000 people in Gaza have been killed. Many of these are women and children. War crimes have been committed on both sides. The deliberate and discriminate targeting of civilians on either side reflects depraving of the worst kind. Hamas fired thousands of rockets to Israeli towns and attacked and killed civilians, including children, women, and old people. It also kidnapped hundreds of people. The Israeli military has flattened big parts of Gaza with airstrikes, blocked deliveries of food, water, fuel, and electricity. The 56 years of military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, 16 years of air, land, and sea blockade on the Gaza Strip, Israeli right-wingers willfully destroying Arab homes in the West Bank and causing continuous provocation at the Al-Qasem Mosque, and Netanyahu in February 2023 signaling clearly that it was extremely unlikely that Israel and Palestinians will make any measurable progress towards a long-term peace anytime soon, provides the context to this war. While Hamas has to be stopped, the humanization of Palestinians has also to be stopped. Right-wing Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant recently referred to the more than 2,000 million inhabitants of the Gaza Strip as, and I quote, human animals, when justifying a complete tightening of the siege on the Strip. While the world looks to engage the parties for a solution, where no viable solution is available, a ceasefire must occur, and humanitarian issues must receive the highest priority. Further, military actions will solve nothing, but aggravate the situation even more. The madness must stop. The United Nations must step up to the plate and must do so quickly, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Nyonso, the PAC. The Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the resistance in Gaza will not stop. The Arab ambassadors in South Africa has come up with what they label a reasonable call. Hamas should release all the Israeli hostages on condition that Israel immediately causes the war in Gaza and withdraws from Gaza entirely. There is also a call that the resistance continue its firepower and use dua and calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to support them to defeat Israel. Al-Jama'ah is torn between these two positions. But let me applaud Naledi Pandor. Al-Jama'ah stands with you. And let me applaud President Ramaphosa, who wants the arms sales of South Africa to Israel to stop. Last year it was 30 billion rand. Under white rule led by Honorable Steenhuisen, such calls will not be made in the South African Parliament in 2024. The DA has a hope to rule. Israel may not be a state. It is a people. Al-Jama'ah condemns the Zionist groups, especially the Jewish Board of Deputies, for heaping insults on the minister and for disparaging her office. This is treasonous behavior and the Minister of Justice must act. It is now time to enforce the legal provisions of the Foreign Military Assistance Act by prosecuting South African citizens taking part in the genocide in Gaza and serving in Israel's army of fascist barbarians and the worst of mankind. Also, to be prosecuted are those engaged in the alleged recruitment and development of South African citizens. Occupying powers do not have a right to defend themselves. Occupied people can shoot rockets. The Al-Aqsa flood has opened the eye of everyone globally that the real enemy of humanity is the triumvirate of the West, the USA's Biden, UK's Sunak, and France's Macron. They've contributed arms to the Zionist state that has been responsible for endless atrocities in the Palestinian areas. The Israel people are their puppets. Al-Jama'ah thanks Minister Naledi Pandor for her unwavering support for Palestine freedom struggle and for the decision to recall South Africa's diplomatic staff from Tel Aviv. Al-Jama'ah calls for an immediate, unconditional ceasefire. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hendricks. The Honorable Mahoma Pelo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I also take this opportunity to greet the collective of honorable members, esteemed ears and eyes of the people of South Africa and elsewhere. I thought, Chairperson, that we need to start by just doing a succinct characterization of the state of Israel. It is a consequence of war. It lives and survives on war. It's a settler, heartless, apartheid, immoral, genocidal, vampire state. The only political relevance of its Prime Minister, Netanyahu, is war. It perpetually quenches its thirst for war through the blood of the Palestinian people. Like a vampire, its primary prey is the people of Palestine. It respects no rules of international governance. It has no ear to listen to Israeli voices that say, "Not in our name." It has no brain to comprehend truth that no force can defeat a just cause of the people. The genesis of its stupendous superiority is parented by the UK and the US et al. It lacks the necessary political consciousness to realize the danger it poses to a correct proposal for the two-states solution. It has no ear and emotions to listen to the painful voices of dying children of Palestine. It has no comprehension that perpetual genocidal maiming, suffocation, annihilation of Palestinians will be met with perpetual, protracted, just struggle by the Palestinians to liberate themselves. Let's just deal with some of the distortions. The war in Palestine did not start on the 7th of October 2023. And the subsequent propagandist tirade of the so-called right to self-defense by the state of Israel. We do not condone violence, but a question might be posed. What right of self-defense do you have when you arrive in a place of not your own, take what does not belong to you by force, and any inquiry or resistance to your immoral, illegal, insane act is met with declaration of death of innocent people? Among the many onslaughts that the Palestinian people had to face is in 1917, 1918, when the British used force to colonize Palestine under command of General Allenby. The British notoriety in 1820 was extended to South Africa upon their arrival here in Cape Town in Table Bay. By fire, by force, State of Israel was declared in 1948, the same year when the National Party was formed and immediately started the apartheid system here in South Africa. As we speak, honorable members, indications are that more than 10,000 Palestinian people have been killed in 30 days. More than 70% of these people who are maimed are women, the elderly, the disabled, the sick, and children. What is the sin of the Palestinians? The only sin is to say that they must have their land without occupation. The genocidal apartheid state of Israel expels the Palestinian people to allow them to annex more and more land, restrict their movement, suppress their human rights, rob and deny them of their dignity without any form of resistance. Because of time, I will not state the number of UN resolutions that the state of Israel has defied from 1947 to the recent history. They also defied the two agreements that were made in Oslo, once they had participated in that particular process. Let's talk about our friends on the left here, honorable members, who are a collective of the moonshotists. Your hypocrisy is exposed because I characterize you as political pendulumists. Conveniently, you've forgotten that you call the ANC and its leader, President Nelson Mandela, a terrorist. You will not tell your friends in the apartheid state of Israel that today you will live side by side in relative peace with the people you call terrorists, monkeys, subhumans, people you maimed, killed, throttled, took their land, their animals, their being, and completely dehumanized us as black people. Steenhuisen, I want to challenge you and your friends, Honorable Steenhuisen. As much as you were populist and went to Ukraine, I challenge you to get into a flight and go to Gaza. Tell your Prime Minister Netanyahu on how the ANC and other progressive formations liberated you, your ancestors, despite the fact that as blacks we are subjects of apartheid, colonial subjugation. Try and draw Prime Minister Netanyahu's attention to the reality and the truth that the collective apartheid onslaught of 342 years on black people in South Africa was resolved through peaceful negotiated settlement. Advise him that as a country, we rank among the best examples on political conflict resolution and working through the United Nations. We stand by as South Africa to assist. Please tell him that we declared as the ANC in the Freedom Charter that all national groups shall have equal rights, and as we speak here today, all national groups have got equal rights. He might listen to you because you are birds of the same feathers. Today you seek to separate Nelson Mandela from the ANC and you have not succeeded. Now let me come to you, Honorable Monsieur of the ACDP. And I want to quote Deuteronomy. It says, foreigners who live in your land will gradually gain more and more power while you gradually lose yours. And this is what the apartheid state of Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. You will never commend and thank the people of Palestine and the ANC for advocating a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace. You will never say this truth, you honorable members on the left. Some of you are offsprings and permanent beneficiaries of the apartheid colonial brutality, whose consequence today is painfully reflected in a white minority of only 7%, controlling and owning more than 90% of South Africa's economy. You say you respect human rights, but you will not tell US-backed Prime Minister Netanyahu that it is inhumane and genocidal to announce on TV that you will deny innocent people access to water, fuel, food, medication, free movement, prayer. You will destroy their hospitals, ambulances, schools, places of worship, and so on and so on. On way forward, we suggest that the United Nations-led immediate peace initiative must be implemented. 2, the UN must decisively act against the state of Israel, and as the minister has said, the ICC must charge Prime Minister Netanyahu. 3, the UN must enforce its own resolutions that have been defied by Israel. 4, we applaud the president for recalling the ambassador, but in addition, we'll suggest that the ambassador of Israel must go home until a negotiated process has been started in Gaza and Palestine. South Africans who are in the Israeli Defense Force must be brought back, named, and action must be taken against them. As Yasser Arafat said, and I quote, The victory march will continue until the Palestinian flag flies in Jerusalem and all Palestine. Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mahoma Pelo.
Yes, we.
The Honorable, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation.
Honorable Chairperson, I thank all members for participating in the debate that followed my statement, even those I disagree with. Honorable Chairperson, I was taught when I was very young that insults are the last refuge of a scoundrel. And so calling me a terrorist, friend of Hamas, etc., is like water off a duck's back because it's an absolute untruth and is a mere insult of a scoundrel who has run out of ideas. It has been clear in all our contributions that we support a two-state solution. This means we believe Israel has the right to exist as a state alongside a state of Palestine. This has been the long-standing view of the African National Congress before anyone expressed a view on Palestine, and so don't come here and attempt to claim any knowledge. The rights of Palestinian people are infringed on a daily basis. The Honorable Lekota was reported in a Jerusalem newspaper as saying there is no apartheid in Israel, people ride on buses together. He forgot to say that Palestinians are forced to live in small enclaves. They are not allowed to own their own property. Their land can be seized without any compensation, and they have to carry identity documents, go through a range of points where their identity is constantly checked. In sum, they exist in an apartheid state. So, Chairperson, attempts to cast aspersions will not cause us to fail to speak for the oppressed, wherever they may be. The atrocities we've reported upon in this debate are real and they're acknowledged by millions. The fake news of baby beheadings have been tried by the greatest in world power and have been proven to be false social media reports. And for such to be reported in this House as though it is factual is absolutely disgusting lies. The bombing of hospitals, which was denied, has been proven to be real.
Honorable Minister,
Thank you.
please take your seat. There's a point of order requested.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Is the Honourable Minister prepared to take a question?
You can take your seat, Honorable Minister. Honorable Dr. Melda.
I've asked if the Honourable Minister is prepared to take a question.
Honorable Minister, are you prepared to take a question from the Honorable
No,
Melda?
yeah, the honorable member can pose it.
Allow.
Did I hear you correctly saying that the atrocities that we are speaking about, the beheading of children, that those are fake news, that it's not true? Is that the position of the South African government? I want to ask you now.
Thank you.
No, it is evidence that has been provided by a range of non-governmental organizations, both in Israel and Palestine, because we don't only speak to Palestinians, we speak to peace-loving Israelis as well. And we know that there's a lot of fake news that attempts to cast Palestinians in a bad light. And it has been admitted, even from the White House spokesperson, that that statement that was made at the highest level was actually proven not to be factual. So, Honorable Member, I've responded to your question. And it's important, as I said at the start of my contribution, that when we speak on these matters, let us speak being honest and factual. The facts are the people of Palestine are denied the right to exist as human beings. They're denied the right to enjoy the freedoms and the rights we so love as South Africans, the rights and freedoms we fought so hard for, the rights and freedoms we united on as a diverse South African people. Today, some of us in this house believe these rights belong to some and not to others. That is not the South African way. We believe all human beings enjoy the right to exist in freedom, enjoying justice and humanity. And that is the message that has to come out of this house. This house cannot stand up for abuse, cannot stand up for the infringement of other human beings, no matter who those human beings are. We've never sought retribution. I have the story of my grandfather died of a broken heart. He was a tailor, and he had worked very hard, his fingers down to the skin, to make enough money to buy a house in Durban. And they got that house, my grandfather and my grandmother. 2 years after they got it, the area was declared a white area. They lost that house without compensation, and he essentially died of a broken heart. I have no retribution, because today I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa. And our role must be to seek to build a better world. That benefit we enjoy of human rights, of a fantastic constitution, of having institutions that are democratic and work for all of us, that privilege is not just for us. It must be for everyone. And in any debate we have, if we are true to ourselves, if we are true to our history, if we are true to what we've achieved, we will stand up and say, what is being done to the people of Palestine is wrong, is intolerable, and we will not pretend to accept it. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, that concludes party responses to the statement. The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Health on performance of National Department of Health and entities 2022-2023.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the report be adopted by this House. Thank you.
Requests for declarations of votes have been received. In line with the motion adopted by the House on the 31st of October 2023, I will now allow for up to 2 minutes. One member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. The DA.
House Chair, the public health sector is in severe crisis and in need of a major turnaround strategy. There is no indication that the National Department of Health has any tenacity in achieving fiscal stability through controlled government expenditure and debt reduction. Just look at the medico-legal claims of 77 billion rand under the department and expenditure that was returned in the financial year of nearly 1.7 billion rand. At this stage, the public health system is on life support, and there is no political will to fix it. Instead, the ANC government is touting the NHI, which is totally unachievable in this economic climate. This ANC government speaks about protecting vulnerable South Africans, but the decline of the health system year on year is dismal. The lack of sufficient management of funding and resources has resulted in an overburdened system that struggles to meet the basic healthcare needs of citizens. This is further exacerbated by the growing population and the burden of infectious diseases, including HIV and AIDS and TB. There are severe shortages of healthcare professionals, understaffing that leads to long waiting times, reduced quality of care, and exhaustion of healthcare workers. In addition, healthcare infrastructure is in disrepair. Many public hospitals and clinics lack essential equipment and facilities, making it impossible to provide adequate care, compromising the health and safety of patients and demoralizing workers. Corruption and mismanagement are plaguing the public healthcare sector, diverting funds and resources away from where they are most needed. This not only undermines the system, but erodes public trust in the ANC government's ability to provide essential services. The NHI is not the answer. The ANC government must address systemic challenges and allocate resources accordingly. The time to act is now. After the 2024 elections, the DA will ensure that that happens. I thank you.
EFF. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Corruption, crumbling infrastructure, patient neglect, equipment failure, theft, organizational chaos, and staff work overload have become synonymous with our country's public healthcare system. The expected decrease in the health budget raises even more concerns, as we can foresee that it will only exacerbate the challenges that are already weighing down on quality healthcare. While we understand that the implementation of fiscal consolidation measures to reduce spending and manage debt is the government's attempt at finding a solution to the enormous financial crisis facing our public health care, we have to lament once again the fact that we cannot continuously be a country stuck in a reactive cycle of implementing desperate solutions. Our government, and specifically the Department of Health, should have paid close attention to the management of our public hospitals and clinics. The Auditor General have reported to us that across provinces, material misstatements in the financial report and the overall quality of these reports have been an issue that requires correction on an annual basis. The sheer apathy displayed by the provincial departments of health for the implementation of the AG's recommendation is simply unacceptable. Considering this, it does not come as a surprise that medical legal claims are consuming the health sector, totaling approximately 67 billion. Therefore, the IFP would like to emphasize both the AG and the Portfolio Committee recommendation that the Department of Health must assist provincial departments in strengthening financial management planning and internal controls to improve and maintain audit outcomes. Challenges of patient neglect, equipment failure, organizational chaos, and staff work overload will persist, and South Africans will continue to bear the brunt in financial management is not sufficiently addressed. Notwithstanding the concerns raised, the IFP accepts the report.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. FF Plus.
Geachte voorsitter, aan hierdie departement is daar geen salf meer te smeer nie. Wanadministrasie en korrupsie is besig om op 'n daaglikse basis hierdie departement op sy knieë te dwing en ons sien dit uitspeel in ons openbare hospitale en klinieke. Vir die 22-23 boekjaar het onreëlmatige uitgawes vir die gesondheidssektor te staan gekom op 'n skrikwekkende 7 miljard rand. Die departement het 'n onderbesteding aangetoon van 2 miljard rand. Mediese regseise vir hierdie boekjaar het te staan gekom op 67 miljard rand. En die agterstand in mediese prosedures is nog nie opgelos nie. Daar is ook geen verbetering in terme van audituitkomste vir 4 agtereenvolgende jare en die groot sondebokke hier is die Oos-Kaap, die Vrystaat en die Noord-Kaap. Material misstatements were identified for Gauteng, Mpumalanga and Northwest. Critical positions that are not filled with the right skills is alarming. Another concern is the lack of internal controls and the lack of oversight. Wat wel kommerwekkend is, voorsitter, is dat die Mpumalanga provinsie fiktiewe gefabriseerde uitbetalings gedoen het vanuit hul onderhoudsbegroting vir infrastruktuur en instandhouding. Die Vrystaat het betalings nie binne 30 dae gemaak nie en daar was betalings gemaak vir werk wat nie gelewer was nie. Die Oos-Kaap het fakture nie binne 30 dae betaal nie. In Noordwes het pryse vir mediese toerusting betaal wat nie markverwant is nie. The provinces, together with the relevant MECs, must come and account before the Portfolio Committee on Health. They must start to take responsibility for the mess the provinces are currently in, and there must be consequences due to this. Voorsitter, daar is 'n oplossing vir hierdie probleme wat tans hierdie departement en hierdie gesondheidssektor daagliks in die gesig staar en waar pasiënte nie die behandeling in hospitale en klinieke kry wat hulle verdien nie. Daar is 'n oplossing hiervoor. Die oplossing is eenvoudig. The solution is to defeat the ANC during next year's election and to elect a government that is accountable and that is responsible. This is the solution for South Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The ACDP.
Honourable Chairperson, the mandate of Parliament is not to be the praise singers of departments, but to fulfill our constitutional obligation of oversight. And it seems that we forget that. We forget the indictment of the Zondo report because many of our members think that we need to flatter the department. That is not our role. The ACDP has committed itself through its public office bearers to address dysfunction and poor performance in governance because of the devastating effect on the people of this country. The ACDP requested a report on the utilization of the 7.6 billion loan from the World Bank made for procurement of vaccinations in 2022. This report was never provided. The ACDP requested that the committee receive a briefing on the no-fault compensation fund. No such a briefing was given in spite of 2 letters. Yet COVID had a devastating effect on our health services and contributed to increase in government debt. It would be a failure for us not to be provided with a comprehensive report on the expenditure on COVID vaccinations, especially in light of the loan. The expenditure of the Department of Health does not translate into better services on the ground. It means the money we spend does not change the lives of the people that need the health services. The idea that the NHI will be the silver bullet for our challenges ignores the capacity of the incapable state. We have a leadership and governance deficit that the NHI simply will not rectify. And it is time for this government to acknowledge that it cannot provide the essential services that our people need. It cannot. It is incapable to do that. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The UDM. ATM. Good. NFP.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The National Freedom Party will support the report tabled here today. We have taken note of the Financial and Fiscal Commission, and particularly the Auditor General of South Africa's findings, and particularly on the National Department of Health and SAPRA. The NFP have repeatedly called for a preventative healthcare system in this country, and now that we can see it is more needed than before, because we have people who've got a hearing problem and they've got a sight problem in this very house. Given the fact that so many ambulances and hospitals were bombed in Gaza and they could not see that, so perhaps they need more attention than others. But having said that, our concern is that there's going to be a budget cut, and having a budget cut means it's going to impact on the health sector. Our serious concern, however, Chairperson, is that, and this is the question I want to ask, why do we need to wait for somebody to die before we act? We've repeatedly raised the concerns of food products manufactured in South Africa, and there's no oversight mechanisms. to the extent that our people are dying at a very young age, number one, and that is why the previous Minister of Health emphasized on a preventative healthcare system like you have in Cuba. And I think it is time that we looked at that very seriously so that our people don't have to get sick and die, okay? I think that is very, very important. And my concern is on the implementation of the NHI with such a large budget cut. Is it going to be able to be implementable timeously and be effective? So as the National Freedom Party, we also want to call on government at some stage to consider moving away from the World Health Organization, and we need to create a new World Health Organization. If you look at the reports of the effects of the vaccines that we have taken and the number of people that are dying from cardiac arrest and strokes. I agree with President Putin. We need a new World Health Organization,
Thank
a new
you,
World Monetary
Honorable
Fund. The NFP will support
Sheikh
it.
Imam. AIC. Cope. PAC.
Declaration, sir.
Thank you. Al-Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, the DA wants fiscal disability. That's a new word for this parliament. So that means you die if you're poor and you live if you have money. Die apartheid self wat die Freedom Front Plus praat van also means that blacks should not live. So there's less people that will vote for the parties of the liberation movement. A vote for the DA is a vote for blacks to die because they cannot afford medical costs and shouldn't get medical treatment. Every year, universal health is delayed, puts us back 10 years. Apartheid has put us back for more than a century, so a solution as proposed by Parliament, the People's Parliament, is the way forward. The NHI is the answer. Bite the bullet to save lives. Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Ndihloniphile Chief Whip. Abanye bafike bakhamise batyhale apha kodwa kwiportfolio xa besixoxa bebathula bangakwazi nokuthetha. The African National Congress supports the Portfolio Committee on Health Budget Review and Recommendation Report. We welcome and applaud the Department of Health's improved audit outcomes from qualified opinion to unqualified findings. We are encouraged by the department's HIV and AIDS response for achieving 94, 76, 92 targets against the 95, 95 targets. Chairperson, the committee's report provides a number of crucial recommendations, including emphasizes on the significance of strengthening accountability and consequence management mechanism in order to promote transparency as well as a good and ethical governance. The report gives recommendation on strengthening the department's systems to ensure a better budget expenditure and infrastructure development. As the ANC, we believe the recommendations in the report are vital and enhancing systems and processes for implementation of NHI, which will be a key milestone for our country's growth and positioning healthcare as a human right and not as a privilege based on people's economic standing. The ANC support the report is rooted in exploration of improving the quality of health services, transforming a country's divisive two-tier health system, addressing systematic and structural imbalances, and forging a future towards universal health coverage. As the ANC, we are committed to the report's recommendation geared towards a system in which every rent is tailed and all the department's programs are evaluated for their impact on improving the health outcomes of all our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I put the motion again. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Social Development.
And I'll recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Ha ke lebohe modulasetulo ke tsitsia hore tlaleho ena e amohelwe ke ntlo. Ke a leboha.
Thank you. Requests for declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow for up to 2 minutes, one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. The DA.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It was reported to the committee that the Department of Social Development and the NDA had obtained clean audits. The whole portfolio showed an improved performance as far as its audit findings are concerned. We congratulate the department for its efforts in this regard. But at the same meeting, we had to express our grave concerns about repeat audit findings of inadequate oversight by DSD over SASSA, slow response of management to address weaknesses, payment of social grants to ineligible beneficiaries, and invalid lease contracts, to mention but a few. And to add insult to the injury, the department returned over 6 billion rand to Treasury. 6 billion rand while South Africa is reeling from a shortage of social workers. We are a mere 6 years from the NDP deadline of 2030, which recognizes the critical need for social welfare services, particularly in the areas of gender-based violence, crime, child protection, violence prevention, substance abuse, trauma counseling, mental health, and care for the elderly. At this rate, it is absolutely impossible that the target of 55,000 social services practitioners by 2030 will be achieved. The DA, however, will be keeping a close eye on the implementation of the department's strategy at an estimated cost of 9 billion rand. At the rate and pace of absorption of unemployed social workers into the system, this is just another ANC pipe dream and lip service to which the most vulnerable in this country have become accustomed. That is until 2024, when the DA will implement a decent social development policy. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. EFF.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, the EFF rejects this report. In a country where we have so many social ills, it is inconceivable that a department tasked with the mandate that it is tasked with can fail to employ the very same social workers that it has paid for their scholarships. Chairperson, the country is in dire need of social workers, and we have thousands of social workers currently unemployed across the country because of this department. Not only that, there is no staff stability in the department. The department is run by acting senior managers. I think it is a Hollywood setup there. There is no plan to appoint managers on permanent basis anytime soon. SRD grant is a total mess because people who apply are never given feedback. There is a serious audit that must be done to determine where these monies go to, because in most cases, the money never reaches the people it is intended for. Not even the department is able to swiftly act to interimly help elderly people, like those who were recently paid with fake notes by Pick n Pay in Ivory Park. Had it not been the good Samaritans of EFF, Chair, the elderly people would have gone without food for the month because they haven't resolved that matter. The department keeps rejecting applications from NPOs that are rendering crucial services simply on the basis of some vague criteria that department uses. The most ridiculous of this department's failure is that relating to SASSA and administration of grants. SASSA is constantly failing our elderly people and all other grant recipients with their failure to upgrade their systems, leaving thousands of beneficiaries stranded each month. The department is also not friendly towards disabled people. People who would otherwise qualify for disability grants
Thank you very much.
must wait for
Honourable
months
member.
before they are admitted. Thank you, Chair. We reject the report, Chair.
The IFP?
I also want the extra time, like you both. Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. House Chairperson, at a time when South Africa faces deep and severe social challenges, Prince Buthelezi's legacy, which we remember today, was one of service to the poor and marginalized. History records that the schools, the hospitals, the homes, the universities that were built in KwaZulu-Natal were due to his leadership. He remained deeply rooted in the service to his people. His example of servant leadership saw life-changing opportunities for many disadvantaged South Africans. Turning to this BRRR report, it is unfortunate to note that not much has changed since last year. Vacancies remain, fraud and corruption at SASSA remains. SASSA still pays people who are not eligible to receive the grant. The grant chaos, which recently saw millions of beneficiaries, especially the elderly, go without food for almost a month, speaks to a system that is struggling and on the verge of collapse. But Honourable Chairperson, let me point out further gaps. This department has made little to no progress in the fight against gender-based violence, or in protecting the rights of children, or in protecting the rights of the elderly. DSD has failed to make any progress in employing the thousands of trained social workers who are sitting at home. And let me remind you, we need these social workers to protect children at schools, to fight substance abuse in our communities, and to protect the children on the gangster-ridden Cape Flats and in Wentworth. As the IFP stands ready to govern in KwaZulu-Natal in 2024, we, as a government in KZN, will support NPOs who are facing closure because the Department of Social Development in KwaZulu-Natal are paying them late, thereby forcing them to close their doors, thereby failing the most vulnerable who rely on their services. We, as the IFP, will rise to protect abandoned babies by legalizing baby savers. We will protect our children. We will protect those living with disabilities, and we will lead the fight against gender-based violence. Simply put, an IFP and government will do what the ANC is not doing, prioritizing the marginalized and poor, just like Prince Buthelezi did. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chair. This department and its entities have more than half of South Africans reliant on them in some form or another, yet challenges continue to persist. The challenges being faced by DSD and SASSA are so great that one almost forgets the NDA is also an entity of this department. There are but a number of positives that vaguely improve the standing of this department, like the improved audit outcome. But when it comes to boots on the ground service delivery, the same cannot be said. There is still a number of critical vacancies in this department. We have seen an acting DG in this department for many years now, and every year it is in the AGSA's report. There are many committee observations that are quite worrying. Struggles with NPO funding and appeals is one such challenge, and the continuing service delivery woes that is still hampering SASSA is another. The move from SAPO to Postbank was marred by issues that started even before the ink on the new agreement between SASSA and the Postbank had time to dry. We have now had a number of network challenges, discontinuations of systems, system glitches, and other oopsie daisies that have seen SASSA beneficiaries not receiving their payments. What is further worrying is the whole Postbank debacle is that not once was sufficient communication given to anyone. Telephone lines that eventually started working could not take the number of calls and then also crashed, leaving beneficiaries without answers. Many of us as members were also contacted by these beneficiaries who had exhausted all avenues, and we could also not assist because we also did not have the answers. The Postbank is now making promises that the issues are sorted, but I'm not holding my breath. The only question that begs to be asked is how will our most vulnerable suffer, how long will they suffer, before this government starts acting and addressing problems in a proactive manner instead of having it fall apart first and then being reactive. South Africans deserve better. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. ACDP.
Honourable Chairperson, the ACDP rises in this budget debate in solidarity with ordinary South Africans who are facing the normal daily crises of poverty, a crisis that is not improving but getting worse as our state appears incapable of driving the necessary societal and economic change that will make the work of the DSD less rather than more important. This daily or ordinary crisis is, however, dwarfed by what befalls our vulnerable communities when an extraordinary crisis strikes them. Communities that I represent, both in the Western and Northern Cape, have recently been struck by floods, and on both occasions we saw the disaster of poverty being turned into a community devastating event. The vulnerable became sick, key family members died, and whole families now face devastating circumstances as a result. As I speak to you, my community is still living in a hall in the Western Cape. In every branch of the state, we must put the family first and stop undermining the family. In every committee I serve on health, education, and even social development, the state is undermining the family. We can never have enough money.
Excuse me, ICT. Could you please? Honourable Lady Peterson. Could you please remove? Sorry about that, Honourable Member. May you continue?
We can never have enough money to replace the role of the family, and we must make the rebuilding of the family a national priority. The second strong foundation that we need to build on is community. The community is closest to problems, and we must empower the community to solve them themselves. The real measure of success of the DSD is not how many of our people it helps, but how many people it impacts who no longer needs its services. And in this, we are failing dismally. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. UDM? ATM? Good. NFP?
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party will support the report tabled here. But above that, we'd like to congratulate the department on getting an unqualified audit opinion, which is an improvement from the previous one. But whilst we talk about women and children, particularly, and the conditions under which they live, let us not forget the plight of the women and the children in Gaza and other parts of Palestine, many of whom are dying of hunger and thirst because of the atrocities committed by the apartheid Zionist state of Israel. To such an extent, with their checkpoints, they will not allow access to water, food, and these are major concerns that they face. But having said that, I also want to say this, that I hear some comments, negative comments about the Department of Social Development. Is it not the responsibility of each and every one of us to apply our minds to what is happening on the ground? And why I'm going to this, Chief Whip and Chairperson, is this. We passed a bill recently on the basic education bill. And one of it is that children must be at school. In full view of us right here in the city of Cape Town, I can take you right now. Tomorrow I can take you again during school hours. Hundreds of them are standing all over the street corners, all over, not at school. So you pass the bill, but you ignore it and do nothing about it. You don't do anything about it because you don't care about those children. You don't care about those children because they're not your class. This is basically what it is. Why don't you get off your backsides and go there and make sure that those children are in school? That is the least you can actually do. So don't come here and say you care and you'll do this because you don't care. Right in front of here, right by the intersection, when you come out of that house that you, the taxpayers, are paying for, go and have a look and see exactly what is happening. But you will not do it, but you'll come here and you'll criticize the others. So
Thank
do
you
that.
very
Go and
much,
earn your
Honorable
salary. The NFP
Sheikh
supports
Imam.
this report table.
AIC. COPE. PAC.
No declaration, Chair.
Thank you very much. Al Jamal.
Honorable House Chair, I hope you're not going to feel sorry for me. I am married to a social worker for 50 years. And I know that
honorable members.
if that was not the case, I would have been a delinquent. So we support the report. We have a Minister of Social Welfare who was a fighter. I hear we have fighters today. They were nowhere near the fighters we had in the days of the liberation struggle. So our minister, she fought for our freedom, and now she's fighting for the poor and vulnerable. Al-Jamaa supports the report.
Thank you very much, honorable member. ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Greetings to honorable members, Ngakumbi Chief Whip. You know, I am very happy when I hear other organizations and other honorable members are witnessing that we have fought for this country as social development. Yes, there are challenges and hiccups somewhere there, but we are correcting each and everything that we have done wrong. Chairperson, the African National Congress has long envisaged a South Africa where social justice reigns supreme. Poverty is broken, and each individual dignity is respected. It is therefore against the background of the ANC supports the budget of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development. It is really surprising for those ones that are also sitting in the committee, and today they are just rejecting the budget. Yeah, we are encouraged by the department's clean audit outcome, that's number one, and its effort in implementing the findings of the AG. We also commend the consequences management measures being undertaken by the department through disciplinary actions against officials who are implicated in unethical conduct, which compromises the efforts of the department. These positive actions affirm the department's commitment towards social transformation and realizing the goals outlined in the National Development Plan and Medium-Term Strategic Framework. Chairperson, as the ANC, we support the committee's report because it outlines a number of recommendations, such as proposal on mechanism of improving the social protection through more effective measures to administer social grants. These interventions are critical for the development of basic income grants that you know it's pipeline, it's on pipeline. Thank you. I thank you.
Order, Honorable Sengwa. I put the motion again. Are there any objections? No objections. Honorable
As
members.
EFF, we object. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Noted. With that objection, the report is agreed to. Order, honorable members. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.